Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my opinion on the best AD carries for Season 5, Patch 5.5. So first up on my list, I have Tristana. Pros to Tristana she's got great mobility with her W. She's also got great self-peel with her ultimate, and for those two reasons, I would definitely recommend her for any people who are new to the role, because if you're playing someone like Kog'Maw or Misfortune, it really limits the amount of mistakes that you can make, whereas if you're playing an AD carry like Tristana, you can get away with making positional errors because she's got her W which she can use to jump away, and then she can knock back someone with her ultimate, so it just allows for you to make more positional errors when you're playing as Tristana, whereas if you're playing someone like Misfortune or Kog'Maw or Varus, someone who doesn't have any mobility, if you get caught out in a team fight, then you're pretty much gonna die instantly. She's also got a very strong late game mainly because of her passive. Once she gets to late game, she has an insane range on her auto attacks, which she can just sit back and use to be very safe in team fights. So with her long auto attack range and then paired with her W and her ultimate, she is one of the safest AD carries in the game come late game. And she's also an insanely strong tower pusher because of the attack speed steroid on her Q and also her E. A con to Tristana is that she does have a weaker early game, so I would definitely just try to farm it out in the early game when you're playing as Tristana, because she doesn't have a lot of kill pressure. I wouldn't go for trades, just try to keep up and farm in the early game, and then once you get to that late game Tristana, that is where you start to shine. Next up on my list, I have Corky. Pros to Corky he is a very strong champion post 6, because once he picks up his Sheen and once he gets his Trinity Force, he does a load of burst damage, and he can pretty much duel any other AD carry in the game once he picks up that item. And he's also got a great mid game, because once you start grouping and sieging down towers when playing as Corky, he can just poke down really well with his ultimate and with his Q, and it just allows for you to siege down towers really nicely. He's also got true damage with his passive, which is really nice, and he deals some magic damage, so if your team is really AD heavy, then I would definitely recommend playing Corky for AD carry, because his Q and his ultimate both do magic damage. He's also got a long range gap closer on his W, which is really nice for escaping if you get caught out, and he's also one of the burstiest AD carries in the game. Some cons to Corky he is very mana hungry in the early game. If you use like 2 of your Qs and then you W away, you're basically going to be out of mana, so be careful that you're not using your W if you don't have to in lane. Of course, use it if you get caught out, but try to spare using your W because it costs a lot of mana, and he does also fall off come late game. Next on my list, I have Graves. So pros to Graves he is a very strong laner. He has a lot of burst damage, and once you get level 6 as Graves, you want to be looking to go for an all-in, because he just does a lot of burst damage once he gets that power spike. The Leona Graves lane is, in my opinion, one of the strongest lanes in the game right now, so if you haven't tried it out, I'd recommend finding a duo partner and try it out, because it just brings for so much burst damage once you hit level 6. If Leona can lock down the enemy AD carry with her ultimate and use all her CC on the enemy AD carry, it's just really easy for Graves to follow up with a ton of burst damage, which makes the combo very, very strong in my opinion. He's also got good mobility with his E, and he's got a great passive. If you are ever dueling with Graves and you either end up winning the fight with around 100 HP or getting out with very low health, it's probably because of your passive that enabled you to win that duel. So you don't really think about his passive too much when you're in game, but it definitely does save you in a lot of situations. And he also does have pretty good wave clear as well with his W and his Q. A con to Graves is that I find it really hard to come back if you fall behind with him. Next on my list, I have Jinx. Pros to Jinx she has insane cleanup potential because of her passive. If you can get a kill or an assist in a team fight as Jinx, it just allows you to hunt down your opponents and finish them off if they are low HP. She also has a very strong late game because if you can get your full build on Jinx and use your fish bones in team fights, it just brings for a load of AoE damage, which makes her really unique because I'm pretty sure no other AD carry in the game can do AoE damage with their auto attacks, which makes her a very strong pick in my opinion. She's also got great CC for an AD carry with her W and her E, and she has an amazing ultimate as well. You can use it to finish off low health targets across the map, and you can use it to finish them off in lane as well, which is really nice, and it just brings a little bit of burst to her kit as well. She also is a great tower pusher because of her Q, and she's got very long range as well with her fish bones. Like I said, she can use it to stay at a safe range in team fights and get those auto attacks off, and she can also use it to poke down her opponents in lane really nicely. Some cons to Jinx are she is semi-skill shot reliant with her W and her ultimate, and she also doesn't have any like sort of gap closer or mobility that she can use to get out of a situation where the enemies are engaging on her. So number 1 on my list for patch 5.5 is Sivir. I do strongly advise that you guys pick up Sivir right now. She is definitely my main right now for AD carry because there aren't really many cons to her kit, to be honest, compared to some of the other AD carries. She has a very strong laning phase, one of the strongest in the game. She's got good poke in lane as well with her Q. She's very easy to CS with in my opinion. She's got a very nice auto attack animation. And she also has insane wave clear with her W and her Q. Her spell shield in my opinion is pretty OP because it just allows her to be more aggressive in lane, and if you're going up against supports like Leona or Morgana or Thresh, then it just allows you to be more aggressive, and it's a lot harder for the enemies to lock onto you. She's also, in my opinion, got one of the best ultimates for solo queue because it's so versatile and you can use it in so many situations. You can use it to either engage a fight, you can use it to find a pick, you can use it to disengage, so it's just a really nice all-around ability, and she's got a very nice passive as well. Some cons to Sivir are she is quite vulnerable when her ultimate and her E are on cooldown. So, for example, if you're playing against Sivir in lane and she uses her E, and you're playing someone like Thresh, the cooldown on Thresh's hook is shorter than the cooldown on Sivir's E, so once Sivir uses her E, then you should be looking for a hook on her, and always try to punish her for her abilities being on cooldown. And she is also shorter range than most AD carries in the game. First up on the honorable mentions, I have Draven. Draven is definitely harder to play than most AD carries in my opinion because he does rely on catching his Q to deal maximum damage, and in teamfights I find it really hard to catch your Qs consistently. However, if you can do that and you are a Draven, if you're a strong Draven player, then you can carry really hard. He does an insane amount of damage come late game, and his ultimate's really strong as well for getting nice AoE damage out in teamfights or just clearing waves. So he's a pretty strong pick, but I wouldn't recommend playing him unless you know what you're doing. Next up I have Kaitlin. Kaitlin is one of the stronger laners in the game, so if you're looking for a strong champion in the early game, I definitely recommend picking up Kaitlin. She scales really well into the late game as well. She doesn't have the strongest mid game, but if you can bully your opponent in the early game and then get to late game as Kaitlin, she's a really strong pick. Next up I have Ezreal. Ezreal definitely is a little bit harder to play because he's skill shot reliant with his Q. However, if you are good at landing his skill shots, then he's very rewarding. He's also got a blink on his E, which is really nice for escaping situations or engaging to get that last hit with your Q. Next up I have Lucian. Even though Lucian's been nerfed so much in the past, I still think he's a pretty good pick. I would definitely still pick Graves and Corky over Lucian if you're looking for a burst AD carry, but if those two are banned or if you are just feeling like playing some Lucian, then he is definitely still a pretty strong pick. Next I have Ashe. So you're probably wondering why I have Ashe on the honorable mentions, and the main reason why is because she provides so much CC to her team. Come late game, if you're playing as Ashe and you can find picks with your ultimate, you can single-handedly win games just by finding that one pick on a squishy target. So she does have a weaker early game though. You have to make sure that you're not dying in the early game as Ashe. However, come late game, when you can be using your ultimate to find picks, she becomes really strong, and she actually does a ton of damage come late game. So last but not least, I have Vayne. Now, I wouldn't recommend playing Vayne unless you know what you're doing on her, because I see a lot of Vayne players just pick her up. They haven't really practiced her in normal games, and then they end up going 0-3 in the laning phase because they don't realize that she does have a bit of a weaker laning phase. So unless you're a Vayne main or you're very confident on the champion, I wouldn't recommend playing her because of her weaker early game. So that is all for the video, guys. If you enjoyed, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you in my next video.